On this episode, the man, the myth, the legend, Leighton, vintage sports card legend. Enjoy.
I grew up such a fan of sports memorabilia and sports cards, and I'm really excited that this show is both going to highlight that as well as the awesome entrepreneurs that make it all possible. Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Talking Shop. On today's episode, we have another very special guest, Leighton from Just Collect Online Auction House and Vintage Breaks on YouTube. My friend, Leighton, how are you?
I'm doing well, Buster. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. So obviously you are a vintage man. You love vintage cards. When did you get your first pack? What's the origin story of you falling in love with sports cards?
Sure. I would say it probably goes back to when I was about 8 or 9. I loved baseball like many, young kids growing up. I liked a lot of other sports as well, but I specifically remember from my home in Sayreville, New Jersey, before we moved in the middle of 3rd grade, that I had a very small Fisher-Price bat and a plastic ball. And I remember, thinking about and dreaming about hitting home runs in my backyard. And I went back all those years later, 60 Eugene Boulevard in Sayreville, New Jersey. And it's so interesting, Buster, I can't speak for you or like if you've gone down that like childhood memory lane.
Right.
But like what I thought was a big like Yankee Stadium type backyard, I literally can even envision it now in my head, like laughing. Like it wasn't big at all. But yet you're a kid and you like look at this mystical, magical backyard and you think it's Yankee Stadium. So that's really when it started for me. A lot of kids grow up, right? They want to be an astronaut. They want to be a ball player. They want to be a cop. It's just for me, I kind of started a baseball player and really never stopped until I realized I actually wasn't going to be able to play professional baseball. And then I had to start figuring some other things out. But I started collecting cards probably, 9 or 10 years old. And, like many kids, didn't know anything about what I was getting. Certainly didn't know who Ty Cobb was. Probably knew who Babe Ruth was. But, didn't acquire anything really older, Buster, until I would say probably like my later high school and college years. Because I had a few bucks from working and, maybe I made a few dollars in collections or deals or what have you. And then ultimately I was able to kind of parlay that into going to Rutgers College in New Jersey, but I financed it buying and selling baseball cards and then working at Johnson & Johnson, which their headquarters are down there. So what happened, Buster, is maybe instead of, only trading the modern stuff, I was able to now buy like a, 1977 Andre Dawson rookie or a Pete Rose rookie from 63. So I knew about business, like it took money to make money. So, I'm shortening the story to get to high school and college, but, I really did enjoy the collecting aspect of it, used it to make a few shekels along the way, but it wasn't really until I graduated college, hey, what am I going to do? Am I going to take a corporate job like everyone's telling me to do? Because I graduated Rutgers College in 2000. And so, I've been in love with baseball cards, I would say, and I've been a card nerd since I was, 8 years old, and I'm very proud of it.
That's amazing. So you had your first booth, if I'm not mistaken, at a card show in 1989.
Yeah, when I was about 12, yep. 11.
How different were card shows back then to what they are now? What are the biggest things right off the bat that...
Sure. Well, first of all, there was no eBay, so no one was walking around with a cell phone, staring at their phone and saying, wait a minute, the last known sale is 87. I'm not going to give you $85 for that. I'll give you 80. You got to pay fees. Like that didn't happen. It was true negotiation. And I remember, it's really funny, Buster, but I remember, I think a couple, adults, if you will, I don't know if they took pity / wanted to, see me do well in the business world, but they made some purchases, which I look back and think they made a pity purchase, meaning they threw some business my way. But I do remember, like if you had a $10 89 Donruss Ken Griffey Jr. card, they might say 8, they might offer you 8. You might say the best I could do is 9. Some would walk away. Some would say, and I remember doing this, how about we put that aside and then let's work on a few other cards I'm interested in, see if we could do a bigger deal. And so does that happen now? Yes, but it doesn't happen without this, without your phone. Checking out VCP or checking out completed auctions from eBay or PSA's website. And so I would say that's the number one change. And the number 2 changes, I would say, is liquidity. I remember, Buster, getting a Topps license with my father's help when I was like 15, 16 years old, being able to buy a very small amount, albeit, but being able to buy from Topps. And so for me, when I left the Howell baseball card show on Sundays from Route 9 at 4 o'clock, Buster, if I didn't move wax, if I didn't move out like existing stock, I didn't have a shop. I couldn't run eBay auctions. My cash was literally tied up. So I remember going to a few. I can like visualize who they look like. I can't remember all of their names, but there were guys that paid like kind of like what I do now, right? They were dealers, you know. So hey, if it's going for 50, maybe I'll give you 40. But you know, back in the day, like you would take that money because I didn't know if I'd see them for 30 or 60 days. Way different than today. I could sell it on the way home from my phone.
It's so true. It's
right?
So true. So what though are the benefits of going to shows still today or having a booth at a show today? Is there any?
Oh, I think so. Number one is the interaction. You know, I heard there was a big show this past weekend in Dallas.
I was there.
Oh yeah, so I want to go, but you know, obviously we all have constraints, and so I wasn't able to make it. But what I heard more than anything, like I already knew there was gonna be business done. I didn't need someone to tell me that. What I heard was there was a lot of young kids. There was a great vibe in the room. And that stuff, Buster, you can't pay for. Like, you can't buy that. You can buy stuff like, you know, I'm going to show you the first card here to start off with. We'll talk about why this is so special in just a few minutes. So this is a Jordan rookie and a PSA 9. Well, this one in particular is very special to us because this was pulled out of Pack 19 from a 1986 Fleer basketball box break that we did several years ago with Vintage Breaks when we first started, and Darren Ravel, when he was working from ESPN, covered it. And so my point is, like, all that live interaction's missing when you don't go to the show. And so what I heard this weekend, just from the few shows that went down, there was one in PA, an hour from my house in Easton, same kind of thing. No one even cared if they bought something or if they didn't. Great to see friends, nice to see people in person, awesome to see product in person, right? Like, instead of buying the card and you see the image online, like, I get to hold it? That's, you know what? I really love this card. It feels different in person. I think a lot of different aspects of our hobby.
Totally. And just seeing how many like different cards you've never seen before and possibly will never even be online, you know, older collectors. Some people still don't like to use online stuff. You know, there are things that, you know, aren't online or will never be online that you could see at a show because somebody took it out of a box, and sometimes people just want to show it off or lure people in to, you know, to their booth because they have a Giannis 1-of-1 rookie that they will never sell, but they're putting it there. So you look at the LeBron and the Kobe next to it that they will sell.
Or maybe that they're buying and they're trying to catch your eye, and that now you see this great card. You're thinking, wow, that card's worth 100 G's. I might show them what I have. You know, I feel a little bit less nervous about showing them $10,000 of cards for sale because all of a sudden now they're kind of saying, hey, how about them apples? Like, I got something really great, right? So That was a great point, Buster. You miss out on like the show me stuff that will never hit online. And, you know, I've watched several of your episodes, and I want to try to share and give some value to the collectors and the folks that are watching this. You touched upon something very interesting, which is, hey, you might see some things at the show, forget about for sale or not, that you won't see online. I can tell you, Buster, it's actually a strategy of mine. So for example, like this, you know, Ty Cobb Old Mill that we just got in a collection from 1910, T206, like, we're not going to put this online. And you might say, wait, that's pretty crazy. Like, how are you going to sell it? Here's the deal. I don't really care if I sell it. And if I do sell it, it's going to be, if you will, to the right home. And maybe it'll be someone who has some stuff that they want to sell. And so my point is, I use it as a conversation piece. I use it as you're suggesting to put it out there. And people are like, wait a minute, not to worry. I'll buy it from you at a later date. And what's your eBay store? I'm like, oh, it's not going to be on my eBay store. And they're like, really? I'm like, well, here's the deal. It's maybe for sale this weekend, but after that, it's going to be put away in my collection. And so you're basically you're putting people to a decision, right? If you're a poker player and you're in a no limit, you love putting people to a decision. So to me, there's a definite strategy, Buster. If you're someone who's doing a show, my advice is, whether it be for the national or like your great show in your town or in your city, save a few choice pieces, wax, autograph, card, that you've never shown anyone for sale online. Maybe you're willing to sell it, but all of a sudden now that's fresh inventory. Even if you've had it for a few months, no one ever seen that before. And I think that is very prudent as a seller to do that, to maximize not just your sales price, but interest, right? If people come to me at the National, Buster, and they see, I'm making it up, just 15 cards, you might be like, well, 15 cards, that's not a lot. Yeah, but what if they're all great? What if they haven't seen them for a year? All of a sudden now there's a buzz about my booth. I don't really care if I sell one of those cards or not, but I have action, I have interaction. And that to me is great.
And the interesting thing too is, and I think people always forget this, some people who just collect cards, oftentimes have a ton of money. They'll just buy boxes and open them for fun. And that's it. That is their only goal in the hobby is to have
Sure.
fun. They don't care about how much money they make.
Yeah, no, it's great.
More than happy losing it because, I've heard Alexis Ohanian refer to opening cards as drugs, like things like that.
I've heard some of that too, gambling, whatever the case may be, sure.
It's true. But, people always say a great modern example would be the Zion 1/1 RPA that supposedly hasn't been pulled. Somebody could have pulled it and doesn't have social media, doesn't care, never posted about it, never told anybody about it. And that's that. And I think people oftentimes do forget that, not everybody is public with their thing. So that's why, that could show up at their card show one day. And you'd be like, oh, it exists.
Yes. And just seeing that, like, hey, can I take a picture with that?
That's social clout right there. And we all know how fun and, all that stuff. Like the reason I love card shows so much is because of the content that comes out of it. Just looking at the cards and filming the cards is just as exciting for me as owning them.
Totally. And by the way, I apologize. I just texted my wife. This is what happens when you work from home with COVID. Grandpa's over today doing some hammering in the house and some home improvements. And so I just let them know, hey, Daddy's live here because I try to call my son's phone, all sorts of people, letting them know, hey, we're doing some content here. We're creating some content. So Buster, I think that you nail it. It's interesting that you bring up the shows. So Vintage Breaks, other than the national, we've set up at several regional shows in the Northeast. And almost every time, Buster, other than the national, we're the only breaking company breaking live from the show. And people ask me, oh, wow, is it great business? Are you making a lot of money doing that at the show? And no, heck no, definitely not. The expenses are way high. If you know anything about business, think about it. I'm paying for hotel rooms, meals, travel, all that good stuff. But what we are not able to do from our office, Buster, is able to connect with people. Mm-hmm. So we find, even if it's one person, if it's several people that are new to our community, or we tell them about breaking, we realize, Buster, they may find another breaker. That's all good. I love the hobby. And I think that in general, if people are more educated about how to grade their cards, a strategy for the shows to be more successful, how to get the most value out of breaking with someone, those kinds of things. Like, I think in the long run, we're going to be better off as a hobby / industry because you're giving people value. They're going to feel comfortable, participating.
100%. So I know you've bought and sold over $20 million. I don't know what the number is, but of vintage cards and cards of all sorts of nature. Do you have favorites that throughout your career, they stand out in your head as the most exciting buys of your life?
Sure. It's funny. Definitely there's some great buys. I used to work for an auction house as my second job before I started Just Collect. So I've only had 2 jobs after college. One of them was working for Mark Murphy, the baseball card kid, who at the time, Buster, from 2000 to 2002, he was kind of like the Steve Hart at the time. He was the unopened king. So he dealt with this kind of stuff. The 1980 Topps basketball box.
Nice.
Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. How you doing?
Nice.
I've kind of seen and been a part of a lot of different stuff. I would say that 2 things come to mind. One was a purchase, and then one was a consignment. And so the consignment, which was the auction house I worked for in the early 2000s, was a fresh T206 Honus Wagner that was the same year that, and we can Google it, whenever the last time, or it wasn't the last time actually, because there was a show after that. It was at Atlantic City National in the early 2000s. And this very, very cute, adorable elderly couple came in, Buster, and they had a list. That's all they had. And they show it to me, and it's very much like the way you believe, like, your grandpa or grandma might have a list. It's in pencil. You can barely read it. And she's saying to me that the family has these tobacco cards. She thinks they're T206s. And I'm looking down the list. I see Cobb, right? And of course, I'm looking for Wagner. And even though you see H. Wagner, because there's a Heine Wagner in the set, ironically, I say very modestly, like nonchalant, I'm like, oh, you happen to know which Wagner this is? And with a lot of confidence, Buster, she said, oh, it's the famous one. And I said, how do you know that's the famous one? And then she gave me the story on the collection. Buster had been in the family for a very long time. They were from Smithville, New Jersey. So if you know anything about your geography in New Jersey, it's just outside Atlantic City. Very cute, little, adorable town. And so I was this, and still am, I'm just a little bit older. I was this young, 20s something, very much like go get them, loved, like forget about the dollars and cents of it. Buster, I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I needed to know I didn't even know if they were going to sell it. Basically, they wanted someone to look at it. They wanted someone to check it out and tell them what we thought it was worth effectively. And what I did for the auction house was I secured consignments. And so for those that are not familiar with consignments, if you work for an auction house or even if it's PWCC or Probstein, you're basically paying another platform to market/sell, in this case, a card for you or a collection, and they take a fee. So that's what this auction house did. And, it was Leightons. They're still in business. A shout out to Josh and Hef. So what I really love is they trusted me. They asked me if I wanted to go with anyone. I said, no, I got this. I got a connection with these folks. So when I go there, Buster, I see the collection. And before we get to the good stuff, they tell me the story of that they were robbed in the early 1980s. And somehow this collection basically escaped, being taken.
Wow.
And so effectively, they weren't really enjoying the collection that much anymore as they effectively put it in the bank. They didn't know what it was worth. They thought it was really good, but they weren't that comfortable with leaving in their home. So basically, they took it out of the safety deposit. They arranged for me to meet them. I think it was I don't think it was that night. I think it was the following night. I went by myself and sat there like a little kid, man. I was 20 something. I might as well have been 12. It didn't matter. I was soaking it all in. And then you get to the Honus Wagner, and I'm 100% sure it's real. Now it's messed up in condition, right? I'm trying to not talk too technically and be such a big card nerd, but like it's not mint. It's far from it. In fact, it graded a PSA authentic because a part of the card was either trimmed off or missing, if you will. But I knew, man, Buster, that was a Honus Wagner, and that was the first time that I had a Honus Wagner in my hands. I've had plenty of their T206s. But that was the first time I had a T206 Honus Wagner in my hands. I told them about the process. I explained to them how we would market it. I told them what I thought it was worth. And I was willing to stay overnight if I had to, Buster. But I told myself, I got to do everything I can to bring this puppy home for consignment.
What did you value the collection at?
I don't want to mislead your audience. And I honestly don't remember.
Got it.
At this point, it was definitely a lot because I know what the Wagner sold for, and it sold for greater than expectations. And at the time, we set a record for a Wagner in that low-grade condition. It maybe sold for like $87,000 or $103,000, which at the time was a lot of money for a very beat-up Honus Wagner, which now might sell for like $500,000 or maybe more potentially
really?
based on the condition. Yeah, but the family was thrilled. I think we gave them an estimate of $50,000. I bet you we gave them an estimate of $50,000 for the Wagner. It sold for more than that. We paid for the grading. They were on the Today Show in New York City. Obviously way before COVID days. And so they just enjoyed the journey. They did very well economically. And I would say that was one of the most fun journeys that even though we didn't buy it, to be part of, because, effectively you took something that had been in the family as an heirloom for a very long time. And, they trusted me to do the right thing for them and to, assess what they had. And I was very glad that it worked out well.
I love that. Now, for your own collection, what are you on the prowl for, even to this day? What kind of cards get you the most excited for your own personal collection? Sure.
So for my own personal collection right now, in a very nutty fashion, I'm working on 3 signed vintage basketball sets. 1957 Topps basketball.
Signed?
So signed. Yep, signed.
Meaning
like every card is autographed. Yeah. Now I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished that. Yeah, I'm not finished yet at all. But this was my theory. I enjoy it very much. And Buster, after being in cards as long as I have, there's something about they weren't made this way. It's actually difficult to get them signed, especially as, folks unfortunately pass away. There's some real toughies, in the set, or they didn't sign very often or whatever the case may be. So everyone can.
It's impossible.
Well, exactly. So I like the challenge. And so the 3 sets I'm working on are 1957 Topps, 1961 Fleer basketball, and 1986 Fleer basketball. So the biggies are the Bill Russell in 57, who I have. In 61 Fleer, the biggies, the Chamberlain, I do not have. But I have several of the other guys, like Jerry West and some of the other big names. In 86 Fleer, I have more than, I would say, 60 to 70% of the set, but I don't have the Michael yet. But the Michael, all you have to do is write a check. So it's it'll be there, one day if you decide I want to take that plunge. But it definitely is fun for me to do that.
It'll be there for you.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, this new endeavor that I've found myself upon. My card, so I got super into cards when I was like 14, 15. I was honestly, obviously cards weren't that hot then. It was like a nerdy thing. Kids made fun of me for it.
Yeah.
I didn't really tell anybody. It was like my secret hobby or whatever. It would drive me to shows like while the other kids are partying. I'm like trading Kyrie autos and stuff. So I started in basketball, left the game for 2 years, got back in last summer, summer 2019. And then was in basketball, a little bit of baseball. Pokemon, was brought to me last November. They were like, all right, Pokemon, this thing's gonna be legit. I didn't listen to them. Although March, I started to. And I'm fortunate that I got into that. But then, as that went up and, once things do what you expect them to do, you got to move on to the next thing. My next thing I decided was presidential autographs and memorabilia. It's a really interesting collectible because it's usually, very much older and much wealthier people who don't. It's a really different market than
Absolutely.
the sports card market. But I find it so interesting because there have only been, soon to be 46 presidents. And, you can get an Abraham Lincoln autograph at 1/5 the cost of a Zion National.
Isn't that crazy?
RPA.
Totally agree with you.
You tell me, is it crazy?
Oh, no, listen. So here's the deal, right? First of all, you got to follow your passion. And I don't think you don't need me to tell you that. I'm familiar with who you are and what you're doing. You're clearly doing that. And, props to you. Oh, show me what you got.
I got these 3 Jimmy Carters in Dallas.
That's awesome. So now why do you have 3? You just thought it was a good value.
It was he had the seller, the same booth had 3. He was asking $85 a piece, which, by the way, if you want to get into presidential autographs, Jimmy Carter is the easiest one to go with. He signed the most by far. He's the cheapest by far, but he's not signing anymore. He's 96.
No, of course.
And the guy wanted $85 for each. I offered him $70 for each. For 3, and I got 3 Jimmy Carter autographs for $210. It's insanity.
Oh, listen, see, you know what's so great about what I do and like what you do is like you're just appreciating it, right? Like even if they went to 0, it doesn't matter to you. You can afford a $200 loss. However, you've now started to learn about history. You've started to learn about our presidents. You're learning about supply and demand, right? And it's like, for example, so I was going to say right now, just because, listen, this is how I do the hobby. Are you going to sell one of those? Do you know?
Maybe one day.
Okay, so I was going to say, if you sell one, I would buy one from you, and I would give it away to the Vintage Breaks community, and I would talk about my episode today with you. I would talk about presidential autographs.
I have more than 3. I'll sell you one.
All right, great. So that's my point is like, to me, Buster, you're following your passion. So like, my buddy Dan Ravel says this to me all the time. Zig Leighton when everyone else is zagging. And so right now, listen, maybe presidential autographs are not hot, right? But at the end of the day, there's only 46 of them. And yet around the world, I could see people collecting presidential autographs, not just in our country. And so one of the things that like soccer cards and this recent boom of Pokemon has taught me, Buster, that like when I look at athletes, even like Rui in basketball, do I think Rui's the best talent in the basketball draft class of last year? No, definitely not. But I'll tell you what, he's one of the most international. And if he does anything at all, what I've learned to understand is that he's going to have some play that maybe another player of equivalent skill people won't be as excited about because there's an international pool of money that wants to go after that.
I've been talking about, with people about this exact topic recently, the arbitrage of buying players in one country and then going to the country they're from and selling them is so real. Oh,
it's definitely real. Oh, it's funny. I can tell by the smile on your face it's real. Yeah, I've been doing it, but like more as a hobby. Like I'm not doing it as part of the Just Collect. It's right. Bullet number 7 on the business plan. Let's tackle this. No, it's more of like just for fun to see if it works. Oh, it's real, man. It's cool. It's really cool.
So crazy. But the thing about the president stuff too is the second you get it slabbed, it's no different than a sports card.
Oh yeah.
President sports card. That's what it is.
I like it. Now, the thing is, and I want to make you nuts, But if you're going to get a little crazy, personally for me, if I was going to do presidential autographs, obviously on the ones that are possible, because, you know, before baseballs were invented, they're not possible, I would get as many of them on a signed base, like single signed baseball as you can. That's the most desirable medium that I know of for presidents. But the problem that I know, Buster, is that when I looked into it a few years ago, and I think my wife is thankful because I already have enough vices with collectibles that I don't need a new one right at the moment. But yeah, when I started looking into it, I was really taken by the signed baseball aspect of it, you know, and not just presidents, but like going beyond that, musicians. Oh, they're very expensive. So like, yeah, stick with. I like your path.
A Carter on a cut from a book in a case is $75, $80.
Yeah.
On a baseball, it's $700.
So my advice is pick, like, when you're on your journey, if you're gonna, like, if you really like one of the presidents who's on a baseball, maybe make that like the highlight of your collection.
Yeah.
And then the rest do cuts and all that kind of stuff.
100%.
Yeah.
I'd love an Obama baseball.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Make that too. If you find someone trying to negotiate for both of us, I would buy one. You know, I had. Do you know who Tim Carroll is?
Who's that?
He's an artist. He cuts up cards.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So he was on a podcast that I was doing recently, and he had a piece that he didn't sell yet, and he told me a piece he's working on. So literally, I got off the podcast with him, Buster, and I'm like, oh my God, if I buy these two pieces, it's $10,000. So I messaged him like, hey, you want to trade? Like, so that's the problem with the hobby, and like in terms of content, and this is in a good way, of course.
Yeah.
You learn about people's other passions. Like, you might hit me up later and say, Leighton, you devil, like, I'm starting on the 57 basketball set, and like I'm thousands of dollars out of pocket already. Yeah, so like that's the problem. You gotta pick and choose your battles.
You do, because there is so much that, you know, you got to decide what you want. And sometimes it can get really broad because, you know, as you and I both have found, we love everything. And
that's a
problem. There's nothing that I don't love.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, you know, bringing, you know, some of your audience over to YouTube. How have you found that being, you know, helping your business and making sense to be putting out content in there? I know you've done card breaks with Gary Vee, who, you know, I interned at his company when I was 16. So I'm very grateful for
that's cool.
That dude and his existence.
As am I.
But, you know, you've done 1986 Fleer Jordan pulls, vintage basketball wax breaks. How have you seen YouTube be, you know, beneficial to you and your business?
Sure. Well, what's really interesting, for example, this Thursday, we have Andre Reed, former wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills and a Hall of Famer. And he's joining us for a virtual pack break, a vintage breaks experience that, you know, last year, for example, Buster, when we were doing it with the likes of Pete Rose and Emmett Smith and such, all of them were in person. And so a few months ago, we decided to kind of take that virtual plunge with breaking and our guests. And so when you're talking about YouTube, like what happens now is, hey, Andre Reed joins us. Although the live portion of the experience is absolutely wonderful for everyone to enjoy, all of a sudden you park that video on YouTube, you have the right tagging, spend a few dollars to promote it. Now I'm going to be maybe appealing to all the Buffalo Bills fans that are watching things on YouTube. Or there's just so many different ways to market, not just from an athlete experience. And then when it comes to breaking, what we found is we love Facebook, and we use Restream, Buster, to stream for vintage breaks. So when we're going live, we go live on YouTube, we go live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram sometimes when it's, you know, newsworthy, all at the same time. But we found is YouTube is definitely the most sturdy and steady for our viewers. I've noticed there's a bunch of breakers that have very large Facebook audiences. And so I just think it's what works for everyone. What I personally enjoy about YouTube is it's a wonderful archive. And so people can literally view over 17,000 breaks that we've done on YouTube, and we're not paying YouTube to store that data. And we actually not only, you know, don't pay them, we're actually using that data and those videos to bring in other people to our funnel. And that is invaluable. And so Facebook doesn't really have that same opportunity at the moment.
Cool. If you could break any box ever, I'm just going to say you can't sell any of the cards that you get out of the break, but the break doesn't cost you any money. What box are you breaking?
Oh, sure. It's funny.
All-time history. Like,
yeah. So
tobacco cards, anything.
absolutely. So I would tell you, there's no doubt in my mind that I would love to be at the corner store as an adult or a kid in about 1910, 1911. Because, for those that are not familiar with T206s, there was a craze across our country. I mean, there's newspaper articles depicting what was going on across towns in our country. Like little kids were going through the trash, hoping that these little drawings of baseball players, as they were called in the newspaper, were going to be discarded by adults. And so to see cards from 1910 that I now love today, but I'm looking at them like this in the condition of 2.5, which I still appreciate, very much, like the Ty Cobb. But to see them like with ultra white borders and mint condition corners, and to be fair, right? Like they made millions of them. They didn't make only a small amount. They made a lot. They just got discarded. And even though there's still a few million in existence, there's not that many in very high grade condition. And so I guess that's my dream. What I've learned about comic books is that there's these wonderful finds, like the Mile High find or whatever the case is, and that cards are preserved, or the comics are preserved in such a way that you could never hope to find them in that condition in any other climate. So I'm just hoping that there's like a basement out there or a storage locker or just something, that there's literally an unopened case of cigarettes from 1910, 1911 that were from the time period of Piedmont, Sweet Caporal, and all the wonderful brands that produce cigarettes that T206s appeared on. I would love to be putting together a fresh set of 500-something cards from those cards. That would be for me.
Man, there's never. What's the highest grade Wagner that there's ever been?
And then there's a 1/8, and then after that, there's only like a handful above 3, and then everything else is below 3.
Oh, a PSA 8.
Yeah, there's an 8. There's a 5MC.
I didn't know
there's a 5. There's a handful of, but like, those cards now are millions of dollars.
I've had cards of mine from 2018 grade less than an 8.
Oh, are you kidding me? I'll send in like a modern card. I'm like 7. Did I miss a scratch on a Chrome rookie? What?
I opened it out of a pack, put it in the sleeve.
Are you kidding me?
I got less than a Honus Wagner from.
Yeah, I know, 1910. What?
That's amazing. What do we think that card's worth?
I'd say in today's market, $5 to $10 million.
And the most valuable card of all time is the 10 Mickey Mantle from 52, right?
I would say right now, I think that's what everyone believes it is, and it probably is. There's 3 of them in existence, and they're probably worth north of $10 million. That's what I've heard.
Could you make up a card that's worth more than that? Like, is there anything we could think?
Oh, sure. I would check the pop report, but I would say maybe like a 33 Gaudy roof. If there was, I don't know if there's any 10s on them. Maybe a 10 of one of them would be millions of dollars, but would it be above 10 million? I don't know. It might be tough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there are some people that rich people who won't get theirs graded.
Oh yeah, there definitely are. There's like, 100%.
Corey Shanis, who we had on Talking Shop, he has one that's not graded.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, there is obviously that, it's tricky to trust somebody else putting, a very thin piece of paper from 1910 in somebody else's hands to take a look at with a microscope and lights and everything. And
give you a little agita, to say the least. So Buster, in the last, let's say, year or so, because I know you've kind of gotten back into it, what piece has really done it for you, like that you pulled the trigger on, for that matter, that you almost pulled the trigger on, and that you're like, oh my God, Leighton, I can't believe I did that. I'm kind of curious.
That I can't believe I did or didn't
Well,
do?
Either way. I don't want to, if I'm tormenting you. Okay.
I'll give you a couple. So ones that I've been really excited about. Like I bought first edition Pikachu PSA 9s, a couple of them for like $200-300. So that I was very happy about. It was cool to see the meteoric rise of that. I bought, when I was young, this is a little bit of a horror story. I don't know if I ever told it, but I bought a Giannis Prism rookie for $1. I also got Giannis RPAs for like $5-10, right?
Oh my God.
I traded them for Kyrie rookie autos.
Oh,
Kyrie and second-year autos. I traded Giannis RPAs for second-year Kyries.
Oh man, that's a heartbreaker.
Historic. I saw one yesterday at the show. The same one, gold standard RPA. Selling for $15,000.
Oh, that kind of stuff can make you ill.
But I had, Prism rookies that I bought for $1. And the only reason I bought them, I was not a scouting genius. I didn't think that he was going to be great. I thought it was funny how long his last name was and how it stretched around the jersey. That is the only reason I bought that card. The only reason. I swear on everything.
Hysterical. That's great.
In terms of cards that, I wish I had bought another cool one. I was looking at the first Bowman set for basketball.
48.
And 48 Bowman. And, I was, interested in like that being the first basketball product and things like that. And I was wondering, what was the first card in that set? The dude, Ernie Cavalry, right?
Yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer, right?
I think so. He had like
a check.
13 to 15 points per game average, but he was card number 1. And as you know, in those old sets, kids would put them top to bottom. It was hard to get the card number 1 or the last card in the set in good condition. Not only, that interested me, but also the fact that it was card number 1 in the set of the first product, therefore the first basketball card.
Super cool.
I cleaned eBay for him. I just bought 10 of them.
I love it.
And that was really exciting. And I told some friends, and I got some friends to buy some because I was I want you to be in on this with me. But those sorts of things like that nobody else cares about right now, but I talk about it now here, and maybe somebody wants one.
No, isn't that super cool? Another fun fact about the 48 Bowman set. So for many, the George Mikan rookie, the key to that set has kind of gotten out of hand for people, right? And so I have a lower grade example in my collection. But I've always loved exhibits. They're mainly known for baseball cards. But there is an exhibit set from the late 40s and early 50s. It was called Exhibit World Champions, and it has different sports in there. And one of the sports they had was basketball. And so Mikan has a card. So I don't know if there's any on eBay right now, but maybe afterwards, Google or go on eBay and see if there's any Mikan exhibits. But I recommended that to a few friends. And I didn't quite do what you did and bought up all of them, but I bought a few. And
the Ernies were $200 a piece. I could afford to buy them all. I couldn't afford one Mikan.
Yeah, well, not a Mikan Bowman, but the Mikan exhibit is much less. And the logic is it's the same year, it's the same name, it's just a different brand. And me personally, I love that exhibits have a brand in the early 20s from baseball cards. So I just think that because of the heritage and the lineage of exhibit, I thought that the Mikan was not a play I'm looking to flip it. I just thought it was a good value, represented a good buy for someone who's a collector like myself and others who enjoy basketball.
Now, when you look at some of these random sets, I know Gary V, one of our group chats or whatever, he was pushing Icy Bear.
Oh, he loves the funky stuff. Yeah.
How do you feel about the funky stuff? Do you stay away from the funky stuff, or do you like the funky stuff?
Here's the deal. At the end of the day, if you like it, I would say collect it. If you buy multiples of it, just decide if you're a hoarder or if you're an investor. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with either one, right? But I think that when you're talking about our hobby and the ability to, sell things with ease, I don't feel that I want to have to explain to people why they should buy a card. I'm not a salesman. I don't like to hype my cards. If you want to buy my Icy Bear because you think it's a good value, great. Do I think long-term that percentage-wise there might be more room in some regional issues than some of the mainstream issues? Absolutely. But it's kind of like saying hey, if you're not a professional stock picker, how hard is it to pick individual stocks versus buying an index fund? So, if you have the money and you have the wherewithal and you can afford to be wrong, I love what Gary's doing because he doesn't care if he's wrong. He's just doing it for fun. But if all of a sudden you want to try to reinvent the wheel and you think, for example, making it up, you want to put $5,000 into regional vintage basketball cards, because I don't know if you can tell yet, I'm a basketball nut. I collect modern, I collect vintage. And so my point is to me, I like enough of the mainstream. I'm not going to put $5,000 into off the wall stuff. I'd rather put it into a few mainstream pieces, but maybe instead of buying a Mikan Bowman, I buy a Mikan exhibit. Maybe instead of buying a Dr. J rookie in a 9 that's got a blemish or an 8, I look for the best dead nuts centered example, 6 or 7, that I know that everyone's going to look at and say, how the heck did that get a 6 or 7? I love being that guy. That's how I like to collect. I'm not going to have $1 million, to buy any one item.
By the way, I've got some interesting news for you.
What's that?
In the last 3 minutes, Chris Paul was traded to the Phoenix Suns.
Wow. So he's not becoming a Knickerbocker, and I guess they're going to do what they can to help D-Book, stay, and right? OKC
gets Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, Ty Jerome, Jalen LeCue, and a draft pick.
I love that we did breaking news. By the way, I've been a fan of Ricky Rubio like his entire career.
Yeah, he's underrated. Dude's
yeah.
so sneaky. His handles are ridiculous.
Oh my God, that's what I'm saying.
He's never been in a big market team.
No. I would love to see him come for the Knicks just so I could watch him more because I'm in the area. But that's a lot of action. Now, do you think Harden's going to become a net?
I think they're going to do everything they can. And honestly,
that's what I think too.
Not a bad trade for the Rockets because they'll be getting Spencer Dinwiddie. They'll be getting Jared Allen.
They have to get Karis LeVert. LeVert's he's legit.
Yeah. No, really like all of them.
And let's be honest, right? They tried to win the title with an incredible roster, and they just didn't do it. So,
and there's scuffles in the team. Nobody thinks that they can actually put it together. And when that happens, when the trust is gone, you got to move on.
D'Antoni is an assistant in New Jersey or in Brooklyn, excuse me. I think that barring anything crazy, I think Harden's coming to Brooklyn Nets.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, it would be.
I want to ask if you had anything else there to show us, if there was anything left that you wanted.
Oh, yeah. So I got a few things. So first off, I told you I'm a basketball nerd.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not enough that I'm just working on the 86 Fleer basketball set signed. Mm-hmm. But several of the players, including Michael, have, their true rookie and the star sets. And, without going too much on a tangent about star basketball and why it's important to me and all that kind of good stuff, I love star basketball. PSA doesn't currently grade it, but you can't deny how amazing those cards are. And so what I decided was that for the main guys of the set, right, non-Michael right now, because, I live in a home with my wife and I like living here, so I'd like to not take all of our money and buy, Michael Jordan signed rookies like they're, candy. But what I started doing was, if you take a look at this, if you can see it, I'm buying and I'm doing them myself, by the way. I do them through private signings. This is a Dominique Wilkins star rookie, but I got it signed by Neek. And I'm including that with my 86 Fleer, and I'm going to call it a master signed set. So it's not going to just have the Fleer Dominique signed rookie. I'm going to have the star rookie of him signed. Why? Because it's possible. That's really it. And so here's the Patrick Ewing, same thing. He's an 86 Fleer. Here's his star rookie signed.
And Patrick never signed.
No, he's impossible. And then how about this? The Dream, I got lucky enough to participate in Hakeem Olajuwon private signing. And this is his star rookie, which to give you some perspective, it's not a cheap card to buy raw. Like it's a few hunch to buy raw without an autograph or anything, So I just do it, because I like this stuff is my point. I'm not reselling it. My son's 5 going on 6 in December. I love how he says to me, Daddy, I just put that into my collection. And so he's doing Pokemons right now and toys, but I have hopes. I got hopes. So check this out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because I got to show this off. This is a Kobe credential, but it's even crazier. This was. Do you curse on your show, by the way?
You can curse.
Oh, I didn't know. I was just
when you're showing a Kobe Bryant that you're showing you.
Fuck yeah, Jesus criminy! I mean, come on. So this was fucking pulled on our show live on Vintage Breaks, and it was crazy because it's like a smidge off center or graded 9. It's graded an 8. It's number 254 out of 499. But if you do, I'm not one of these math, whizzes that can figure out the exact probability. Buster, we didn't open a case, man. We opened a single box. We did it by the pack. Someone pulled the Kobe credential. We got it graded for him. And right now, Vintage Breaks is the proud owner of it. They decided to sell it to us. People ask me, what am I going to do with it? The thing is, I want to buy it, but I don't have to buy it because I'm, part owner of Vintage Breaks. So I'm just going to let it stay here with me until I'm forced to a decision, right?
You have it figured out.
Right, that's the deal.
Wow.
I'm just, I'm the custodian for all this stuff. That's how it works.
That's the best.
Yeah. So, one of the other items I have here is just a remnant of, it's pretty wild, actually. Let me show this. I don't know if your fans know this. Buster, and if you want to collab on this, I got to tell you, man, I appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing for the hobby. If this is possible, you'll let me know. But I'll explain to you what this is if you can't see it clearly. It's a LeBron black refractor.
Exactly what it is.
Yeah. So it's a PSA 9. But I don't know if you know this part. This is actually right now for sale as part of a set break that's available through vintagebreaks.com. It's $450 a spot. There's 165 spots in the set break. So if you buy a spot for $450, you're guaranteed to get one of the 165 cards. There's only like 63 spots left. So we're going to try to sell it out by the end of the year. We're going to make a huge event of it. And I'll tell you what, I just decided this. Let's do this, Buster. Let's hook up afterwards, or you tell me to talk with Ben, what have you. I want to give away a free spot and that $450 break and a chance at a $50,000 LeBron numbered rookie on Black Refractor PSA 9. We're going to give your audience a chance to win a spot for free. How about that? And I know it's a great idea. We did this with Ravel, my buddy, because he's always doing wonderful stuff for Vintage Breaks in our community. It was the single highest tweet that he ever had retweeted when we gave his community a free spot, because Darren has been unbelievable to our community for the last several years. So I'd like to do that for you, Buster, because I know that you're bringing a lot of folks that maybe like we're fringe people, right? But now they're like getting the hook, and we want to make them really happy and excited about breaking and LeBron and watching our episode. So I thought, what better way to do that? Let's give them a free spot. You'll figure out how to do it. Okay?
We'll make it happen.
Great.
I want to close this out by asking you for a piece of advice for somebody who's just getting into the hobby and they want to get in, not just as a collector, but as a collector-investor. What would your best advice be to them beyond just, the do your research, everything of that nature?
Sure. So, I hate to put it like this, but I think it's important. Is this someone that has millions of dollars? Is this someone that has hundreds of dollars? And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because there's a difference.
Let's say they have $5,000.
Great. $5,000, start learning. Looking at eBay completed auctions, looking at major auction houses like our friends at Golden Auctions and Heritage, meaning seeing what things sell for. But this is the point. Don't try to soak it all in. Do you know that when I was at Leland's back in the day, Buster, I would take an auction catalog that had 2,300 items, and I would write with a black Sharpie on every single item in the catalog. I'd flip it. It took hours. I'd write down the closing price of what it sold for. That knowledge to me, basically, I'll tell you the deal. What stuck was the items that I really were interested in, I would remember. And the ones I didn't care about, I would not remember. So this is what happened. The process changed. As I did it over the coming years, I would only do it on the basketball section. I would do it on the card section. I would do it on I like music, so rock and roll and memorabilia section, right? But I didn't do it on the hockey section. Do I love hockey? Am I a Ranger fan like Ben? Yes, but I'm not a diehard. And so what I've learned, Ben, and this is why my advice getting into a collector just getting started, don't get overwhelmed. It's really easy to. So soak in some information, figure out your path, and then try to become a little bit more of a subject matter on whether it be basketball cards or a certain genre of baseball cards. Or for that matter, are you kidding me? You can buy an Abe Lincoln autograph for less than the cost of a Zion? I love that shit. But you should figure that out for yourself and then start deploying your money. Because you got to remember, you can love the stuff, but liquidity, even though it's a lot better than it used to be, it's so, and I think you would agree with this. I think folks like Adam Lefko, who are newish, and he's a great guy, even Darren, guys that are buying, that are new, they see how easy it is to buy. Selling can be a pain in the butt. So you want to think about all those different things. Even when I say selling, I talked to a buddy about a deal of unopened last year or earlier this year. It was 40 unopened cases. And even though it turned out we would have made a bunch of money, we didn't want to have 40 cases in our respective businesses. It would have been a pallet of stuff. So you got to think, that's what I mean. I know there's a lot of stuff I'm throwing at you, but think before you buy and then maybe try to choose a path or two. And then remember, it's always easier to buy and get the item in than it is to sell.
Totally. And I think the one thing I would, add to that as well, which I learned from experience and failing at this, buying things that are extremely liquid are great because it makes it easier to sell. Like me buying, the highest end Danilo Gallinari rookie because he was my favorite player growing up.
Gallinari. He's a former Knickerbocker. Yeah.
No matter how, if that was $5,000 for his one of one, I didn't buy this. I'm just making this up.
Sure.
Compared to me buying a nice Luka, it's a lot easier for me to sell that Luka because a lot more people want it. So the liquidity there is a lot easier, and that's something that I've learned.
No, that's a really great point. And to be fair, right, I think you should also look at it as a form of entertainment. So, for example, getting back to Gallinari, if you want to spend $500 on a Gallinari card and it's your money and you've worked hard for that, and you're not trying to show it off to your friends because you're proud of what it's worth, it just means something to you. You're emotionally connected to it. By all means, I encourage that because I do that every week. I'll buy something that I don't need it. It costs $17, but I'll share a little tip with folks. This is something that we're doing with all of our respective athletes that we're bringing in for vintage breaks, experience breaks. So like I said, this week is Andre Reed. Believe it or not, our last break was Dominique Wilkins, Buster. It was fantastic. So what we're doing is we're buying rookie year tickets of these respective players that we're doing the breaks with, and we're getting them to sign it on air, because it may seem like, oh, that's, you know, a cool idea. But guess what? There was only 2 Andre Reed rookie year tickets on eBay. They were less than $20 each, but now they're gone. So like, it's cool stuff like that, Buster. It doesn't mean that we're going to get rich off of that by buying rookie year tickets of players, but it's a very cool way to collect. That's my point.
100%. And with that, I think that's a perfect way to close this one out. Leighton, you're the man. Just Collect Online Auction House and Vintage Breaks on YouTube. Check them all out, my friends. We'll link everything in the descriptions below where these are posted, and we'll have more news to come on that spot that Leighton was talking about. I appreciate you, brother. This was really a pleasure.
Oh, it was awesome, Buster. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.